Three people asked me not to pick them if there's going to be any exercise going on, so if there is anybody else that wants to be excluded from the exercises, let me know now, because check how funny you are. 4 months ago, I had a pleasure to speak in Warsaw, and I was doing the workshop that I called the stage jazzman. And I compared the speaker to a musician who plays jazz. And jazzmen are the kind of musicians who do it their way. Even if they play classic songs, they do it in a different way. So they are showing their personality in that music. And what I'm going to do today is to ask you to become a jazzman when it comes to communication, meaning breaking the pattern. Because if there is one thing that you can never forgive and forget about the speaker, is boredom. Who likes to be bored? Who thinks the fees in Toastmasters are too high? Just two of them. What is humor, ladies and gentlemen? What is humor for? This is the structure of my workshop. It's not this page. I have a few slides in here. I always do PowerPoint presentations, so this is the structure of this workshop. It will go smoothly as a song. What is humor then?
Surprise.
It's a surprise. What is humor?
It's a way of dealing with tension.
How can we create a simple definition of humor? What is it and why are we so hungry for it? Why are we always waiting for it?
It makes
What
me
makes
laugh.
laugh? Make laugh is good.
Positive emotion.
Make laugh.
When I was in that workshop a few months ago in Warsaw, I was analyzing in detail the speech of the world champion, showing that in a 7-minute speech he got 21 laughs, which makes it average 3 laughs a minute. And it wasn't a humorous speech, it was inspirational speech. 3 laughs a minute, that was the average. When you watch the TED Talks, the most popular ones, they have on average 2 laughs a minute, 2.5 in the case of Ken Robinson. Me, in my 10 speeches in Toastmasters, I got 2 laughs. And they both came from my mentor. Thank you, Christina. But we love those humorous speeches, even if they are informative, even if they are inspirational, we love that element of humor. So it's the ability to, there are 2 key words in here, to surprise your audience by connection of 2 or more elements. That's it, that's the definition. That's the simple way of looking at humor. Surprising your audience, so doing something that will break the pattern, you will do it your way, you will break the expectation through connecting 2 or more elements. But why? That was the definition, let's look at why. Why are you here today? Who of you thinks you're not funny? Who is funny in here? Who is neither funny nor unfunny? Do you think it's the question, either you have it or you don't? With humor?
No.
But there are people who have it naturally. It seems like it's effortless for them. They crack jokes all the time. So is it or not? Is it a skill that you either have it or you don't?
That
In
depends.
your genes.
I think that
In your
depends.
genes.
Because there are some people, as you said, which it comes naturally for them, but I think it's also a skill that you can get.
Are you sure?
Yes. You are going to teach us.
Very high expectations. So why? Why? I found 3 big reasons why we love humor and why we should use humor even if when we have a business presentation, when we have inspirational speech, informative speech, it doesn't matter. Why? First of all, it's the fuel. The fuel for what?
Emotions.
Yes, these are emotions fueling what?
For life.
Relationships. I mean, people like funny
Exactly,
people.
connection, automatically. When you get a first laugh in your first minute in a TED Talk, the connection is completely different. Because you are showing your human nature. Human nature is everybody wants to laugh. What else? Fuel for what? Thinking.
Fun.
Pleasure.
Relax.
It's also, who of you likes physical pleasure? Humor is also physical pleasure because it's the release of tension. When I was analyzing that speech of Dhananjaya Ketirarji, yes, I know his name, after 3 workshops, I was talking about 3 types of energies you can have on stage. The reflective one, so it's more deep, it's inspirational. It's when you stop and you say something really important. The reflective type of energy. Then you have descriptive type of energy, logical one. When you're informative in your speaking, when you're telling the story, telling the details. But there is the third type of energy that balances the wonderful jazzman-like type of speaking, which is entertaining energy. And this is what we need. We need perfect balance between those 3. Because if you exaggerate with any of them, with the reflective one, it gets too heavy. With descriptive one, it gets too boring. With the entertaining one, you can also exaggerate and you become a clown. Yeah. Public speaking is not the same as stand-up comedy, and I'm not asking you to become a stand-up comedian. That's not the point. Because stand-up comedians do it differently. They have one-liners. And we're going to analyze those one-liners as a tool today. In details, I will show you the mechanics of every joke in stand-up comedy. But that's not your goal as a public speaker. Your goal is to use it. And your goal is not to create this rolling on the floor laughing, this ROFL. That's not the point. The reaction you want to have is this. That's enough. That's enough. That's enough because it already boosts people's attention. So, to sum up this first part, there has to be the tension between you and the audience. Because without tension, there is no attention. Alright? But when you exaggerate with that tension, when you feel like this string is too tense, people can feel it. That's why we have humor. To release that tension and experience the physical pleasure. Which it is. Another benefit, another why, we're moving very quickly, for using humor is, it's a vehicle for the content that might be boring or heavy. So it's also an art to use humor, to use it as a platform for the content that is not so easy to show. That was it for the first part. Now, any questions? No questions. What other benefits of humor can you see, can you find?
Relax.
Yes, releases attention, absolutely. What other benefits do you have? Do you find? Better thinking.
Helps break the ice.
Absolutely. If there is an ice, of course.
Makes bonding with an audience.
Hmm?
Bonding with an audience.
Connection, yeah, we already mentioned that. What else?
Without calories.
Yeah. It's also when you laugh a lot, it's good for your belly muscles. Your 6-pack up. Anyone wants to show it? Kasper? He has it, but it's so well hidden. He's so modest. I won't do it now. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the real goal. The real goal is not to write some jokes and to tell the jokes that you have written. Because when after completing the Competent Communicator, I started doing the Humorously Speaking Manual. And my humorous speeches were the least humorous of all of my speeches. Like I was struggling so hard on stage because I got so tense that suddenly, even if the joke seemed like a nice idea, and I was so tense that my nervousness killed the vibe of humor. And I was trying to memorize those jokes, and I was trying so hard to impress others, and this is the biggest mistakes in humor. That when we have this goal of impressing other people, and we think what other people might think is funny, but we are not actually enjoying it ourselves. It's not self-amusing for us. So we are not smiling about the idea of that joke, or the idea of interaction, or the idea of creating this communication interaction. It's gonna fail. And this is what happened to me in my 5 humorous speeches. It's like almost no joke from those speeches worked. Because I killed the flow of humor. So what is the real goal, ladies and gentlemen? What is the real goal here?
To make yourself laugh.
Relax.
To love yourself or to laugh at yourself?
No, to laugh at your own jokes first.
To become a person.
To have fun on stage, and then people are having fun with us.
There you have it. To come to the situation when that humor becomes just a natural part of the interaction. When it becomes effortless. Of course you understand the mechanics behind it, but the whole process, the process itself is effortless, is relaxed. You're not trying to impress anyone, but it's delivered in a relaxed manner, and it's authentic. So that's the real goal, that's the who of humor. You're not the person who memorized a joke, and now I'm going to tell you I memorized a joke. All right. So what is funny? What is funny?
Whatever happens in this room over there.
Anything can be, really.
What do you
Something strange, something hard.
Something surprising.
For example, something weird.
Yeah, the surprise happens, but what is funny? What is creating that? Something
When you
will never
take the facts
expect.
out of everyone knows from life.
All right.
Yeah.
So where do you find ideas for humor?
Everyday experience.
In mistakes.
In mistakes,
Yeah.
Failures.
in failures. Yeah, other people's mistakes, of course.
Life stories.
Life stories. Do you want to share? My whole life is a joke. See, guys, this is the type of something that is happening here. This is the type of humor that I love, which is spontaneous. It's not memorized jokes. It's the interaction when you're showing that you are present and you're a conscious speaker because you are actually you're just playing right now. Just from simple conversation, humor is effortless and it's free. You don't have to brain it so much. So internalize this state. All right. What do you find funny? When a joke is funny and when it's not.
When we hurt someone's feelings.
It's good that you can see it. When is it funny? When you hurt somebody's feelings. With a straight face. Kacper, you had a fantastic joke that worked in Poland, didn't work in Germany. What happened?
Shit happened.
It's okay to say shit. It's okay to say
What happened? We were talking about business etiquette before with Dominika. What happens when you break it? When you break the code? Because humor is about breaking the code.
The thing is in the common key.
What is the common key?
When we don't know the common key, so this thing with which we can uncode this message.
Is that hurting your
So
feelings?
we are failure.
What is that magical common key?
We should find common language. And it's not a thing in words, in symbols, I would say. So
Maybe a
it should
cultural
be
context.
something.
Alright, it's a bit unclear to me now. Maybe if you give an example, I will be.
Maybe you have different codes.
Oh yeah. Alright, so where is humor? Because we have to break the code.
I think the price is smile. If you see a smile on someone's face, it means that your humor was correct. Of course, excluding Japanese and others.
We're not looking. Anybody Japanese here? You're very tall around here. Of course, Japanese, no. How do you know it? What was it? How was that funny?
This was funny.
That was example.
Silence and someone laughing, it's funny because there is this silence and nobody expects it to be broken so abruptly, and then somebody starts laughing and it's contagious, so other people start laughing too.
Absolutely, it is contagious, but how can you know in advance if it's going to work or not? First of all, there is not a single joke that works all the time, because some people are just serious. And there is just different taste for jokes. But if it works for like 70-80% of the people, it's great. That's the result you want to have. Alright, so how do you know in advance that someone is going to smile and laugh?
Know your audience.
Prepare.
You don't know. You never know 100%. But the thing is, can you see it, by the way?
Yeah.
Alright, I'll use another one. When you're breaking the code, this is the violation. Right? My wife left me 3 months ago with my best friend. Boy, I miss him. Right? It's an example of a joke. And the first part, my wife left me with my best friend 3 months ago, is a violation. Right? It's breaking something. Something is wrong here. Something is different. So there is violation. And now the key to make a joke is to make the violation in the way that is benign. Benign means it's not so serious, it's safe, it's acceptable. And humor is here. Right? It's like saying, I have sex almost every day. Almost on Monday, almost on Tuesday. Right? The first sentence is violating some norm. We're not talking so openly in public about it. So there is some violation going on in here.
But this is
But-
one-liner.
What?
One-liner from stand-up, yeah?
It's one liner from stand-up, absolutely. It's a tool for us, public speakers as well. One of the tools. We're going to go in details in a little while. But it's benign, so people can feel that they are safe. It's acceptable violation. That's the key to humor, acceptable violation. And some jokes that will be acceptable violations in Poland will not be accepted violations in Germany. Not even mentioned in Japan. Any examples? Do you have some one-liners that you absolutely love that you want to share? Very short jokes.
I'm married for many years and I love only one woman. If my wife will know that, she will kill me.
Yeah, I love my mom too. When I was roasting one of my friends in our club, I said, I became his mentor because I love doing the impossible. So you can say, I'm very honored to be your mentor. There is expectation that I will show like the gratitude, the gratefulness, because I love doing the impossible. All right, so humor is here. This one alone is boring. This one alone is dangerous. Only with close friends. No, this way. Alright guys, so we are slowly moving to the what. What is funny and where can we find humor? And now, you can find it everywhere, that's it.
You need to inspire from some words, some situation. And
That's it, that's what I meant by the element of who. Just start collecting this stuff, just put other lenses in your eyes. Just turning the life into a playground and a fun place to be. Just seeing those elements everywhere. So, here we go. Let's analyze the joke, this one-liner we mentioned before. I think it's like coding, basically, because when you have a joke, the thing you see is the setup and a punch. You only see this. A setup and a punch. Like the setup is, 3 months ago, my wife left me with my best friend. That's the setup. And then you have a punch. Boy, I miss him. That's a punch one. Alright? That breaks it. This is what we see. But what happens behind the scenes? So that's the so-called front end of the joke. Now what is the back end of the joke? It's this. If you analyze the best stand-up comedians, it is this. It's the ability, very often it's intuitive, the ability to do this. Is that clear?
No, can you play small? Can you read it?
I'll put it closer. Can you see it?
No.
Alright. We'll be analyzing this anyway, so. Our brain, our mind works like this. When you say something, it's already assuming. It's already in the process of making assumptions. Right? When I say, today in the morning I ran 10 kilometers. Right? When I say this phrase, this sentence, what assumptions can you start making about myself? Or situations. Today in the morning I ran 10 kilometers.
Hard working.
Yeah, fit person, hard working. I missed the bus.
You take a shower.
I'm exhausted now.
Maybe you run marathons.
Maybe I run marathons.
Healthy, fit.
I'm healthy and fit, thank you. I need a shower.
We feel it.
Okay, I'm not very close to you. Out of respect. So there is always the whole list of assumptions because our mind works like this. And this is a chance for us to start being humorous by breaking them. And when you start creating jokes, first of all, I encourage you to spend a few weeks with this. Just to reprogram your mind, your brain, to start looking for the way to break the code in the way that is acceptable, meaning doing it your way. So, when you have a setup, so the first simple sentence, just write down the assumptions you're making. Because when we have a setup, there is this story about this setup. My wife left me with my best friend. There is a story to it. You already imagine the whole story, which is like the guy is probably depressed. Something very difficult happened. So list the assumptions. Then, very often, we have one assumption that is the biggest, the strongest. We call it the target assumption. The target assumption is something that everyone expects to happen. Right? You mentioned I'm a coffee lover. Who else is a coffee lover, by the way? Do you have a problem with coffee?
No.
I have a problem without coffee. Right? Breaking slightly, just bending it slightly. You don't have to make people roll on the floor. Just slightly, bend it slightly. Make it enjoyable. Alright, so there is target assumption. The target assumption, let's say, today in the morning I ran 10 kilometers. What is the target assumption here?
You're a runner.
I'm a runner. I went running just to get fit, right? To get some exercise.
Nothing to do.
That's the target assumption when you say something like that. And then we move to the connector. Probably this is something you meant. Finding the connection between the setup and the punch, between the first story and the second story we're going to tell in a little while. The connector here is the reason why I went running. It's our chance, it's our gateway to go in a different direction. In this case, the reason why I went running. So, what can be other reasons?
Because you haven't drink, yes.
Apart from target assumption that we made. I went running to get some exercise. We find the connector, the reason to go running, and we look for the reinterpretations for the connector. Alright? Is that clear so far? So what other reinterpretations can we find for this?
You miss your bus. You missed your bus.
For example, and then 10 kilometers after the bus. Why not?
So yesterday I went running. Cocaine is a hell of a drug.
Wonderful. That will be already a punch. Let's go step by step. I know you have this process very intuitive now, and we all have, by the way. We all do. Now it's a chance for you to do it more consciously, and for some time you might be thinking about it, but the goal is to make it automatic, so that with time it becomes effortless. Very good, that was already a punch, by the way. So reinterpretation for this would be?
I face the dog.
For example?
I want to be faster than buses because I don't want to pay for tickets.
For example? For example, what else?
You couldn't catch your victim.
Can you expand on that? All right.
You repeat?
Can you expand on that, victim? Tell us about your personal experience. Like that. I'm glad you don't have any experience. So we have these possible reinterpretations, and we choose one that is like the most fun, that will be the biggest surprise. In this point, we pick one that will be the biggest surprise, and then out of it, we compose the second story. What you said was already a punch, so form of what we see in the front line, the front end is this. Setup and a punch. Only two things. So you already said this, but to understand the mechanics, how you found it, how your brain went this way to create a punch. You decided that it will be a surprise to tell about being high on cocaine. Also personal experience.
For anybody who knows me, not a big surprise.
Thank you for sharing. All right, in our example of being left by a wife with the best friend, the connector is, look, we have the first story. There is a depressed guy who was left not only by his wife, but also she went with his best friend. So the first story is automatically for us, he's depressed now. It's a tragedy. So that's the target assumption, he is depressed because they left. What can be the connector here?
Friend.
The connector, general connector, can be his feeling, right? Or can be the reason why he's depressed. If it's the reason, then we change the reason in the reinterpretation. So he's not depressed because his wife left him. He's depressed because he misses his friend. Right? So it's this one that was picked out of reinterpretation and compose the second story. If we choose a feeling, let's create another scenario, another punch from the same setup. Will be this. If we choose the feeling. 3 months ago, my wife left me with my best friend. I'm very happy to share. Right? That's a strange one, but it's showing you a possibility of going in the process of creating jokes. Right? So the feeling was a connector. He wasn't depressed at all. Actually, he was so compassionate, so open. I'm very happy to share. Another possibility.
So I can live with Mark now. Oh. Now. That's the end of the story.
I didn't get it.
I wish him good luck.
So when you have the second story, it's time to write a punch or to create a punch. And what is the best possible punch?
Short and strong.
Exactly. It should be concise, short, strong, just expressing the essence of the second story. Like in these simple examples of one-liners. So now very quickly, I would like you to do it in the groups of 2 or 3, if you like. Just go through this process with some simple setup and try to create a joke in 2 minutes. just to understand it in practice. All right? I'll give you 120 seconds. Let's go. Luca's coming in a minute. Yeah.
I went on holiday to Miami Beach, and my mother-in-law enjoyed it.
Okay, we liked it, okay?
Hey guys, don't expect it to be perfect, they're beginning. Lucas.
I hate mosquitoes. They take blood out of my victims.
Yeah, another one here. Extreme violation here.
You look gorgeous today. I almost did not recognize it.
Depending on the person. Again, depending on the person. Now, then we can incorporate that dynamics. We only have 3 minutes, right? Yeah. Yeah, one more example.
And Mommy, I would like to play with Grandpa, please. Keep the coffin closed.
Did you get the German humor? I would like to play with Grandpa. No, please keep the coffin closed. Depending on the person, that might be here.
About these two circles, what is this violation with playing with Grandpa? Opening coffins.
Ah, you like it? Okay.
No.
I
Yeah, play with your grandpa.
The second part is violation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's opposite of what you.
It can be opposite, no problem. It can be opposite, just the essence of the joke is here. The joke is here, right? So we combine two elements. That's the dynamics of behind the jokes. And then you can incorporate that into the specific forms of jokes that we use. Exaggeration. Can you give me an example of exaggeration? No example of exaggeration.
Did you drink yesterday less than 10 minutes?
Alright. Maybe. Yeah?
Getting fired. We got invited today to an extravagant garden. It's going to be McDonald's.
For example, some kind of wordplay, right? Callback. I love callback because this is the humor that you have for free, and if ever, for example, you speak at a conference and you have many speakers, and there is a big laugh at one joke of one speaker, just use it, just mention it in your own speech, because it's already a trigger for humor. People associate that word, that situation, that context with humor. So use it, even if in your own speech. When there is a big laugh, just repeat that shit. Because it's free, you have it available. Alright, sarcasm. Sarcasm is basically saying exactly the opposite of what you think. Kasper is a master of it. As a man, I find it really easy to understand women. This type of stuff. Misdirection. You're going in one direction and suddenly there is... An example? In Toastmasters, I met all kinds of people. Inspiring people, wise people, naked people. Right? I'm going in why you are expecting like the character of people, and now there is something from a different category. So we have misdirection or incongruency in this case. Unfortunately, for the last 5 minutes I'm being shown the red flag, so I have to finish here. I hope this gives you a fresh look at how deep you can dive into humor. It's an art and science, so this was the part of the humor science, but the real goal is to use it as an art and become an artist of communication. Thank you very much.